Since 1973, the United States military has relied entirely on an all-volunteer force. Yet, despite this shift away from conscription, the federal government maintains a strict system to track millions of its young citizens. By law, almost all young men in the U.S. between the ages of 18 and 25 must register with the Selective Service. For decades, this has required a manual submission within a tight 30-day window of their 18th birthday. Failing to complete this paperwork is a federal crime. While prison sentences are extremely rare, ignoring the requirement can trigger life-altering penalties, including the sudden loss of federal student financial aid, strict bans on federal employment, and the denial of U.S. citizenship. For 50 years, that single form has functioned as a high-stakes ritual of coming of age in America. This manual era is scheduled to end this December. Congress recently included a rule in the National Defense Authorization Act that eliminates self-registration in favor of an automatic federal database. Removing individual agency from this process has triggered widespread domestic anxiety. Critics and citizens alike have raised concerns that a more efficient registration system is a precursor to a return of mandatory service. This anxiety is tied to a volatile geopolitical landscape. Ongoing military operations in the Middle East and a fragile ceasefire with Iran have made the possibility of a future conflict feel increasingly immediate. Because of this ongoing global instability, the public has reframed a routine administrative update into a major point of national concern. From the government's perspective, the primary motivation for this change was not military strategy, but a breakdown in the existing infrastructure. This chart shows the decline in historical draft registration. By 2024, civilian compliance had fallen to 81%, an unsustainable level. This failure is expensive. The Selective Service spends millions every year on advertising, just to remind eligible men that registration is required by law. From a budgetary standpoint, automation is a method to repair an operationally failing and expensive database. Automated registration already exists in a vast majority of U.S. states. Currently, most local jurisdictions automatically register young men when they apply for a driver's license. However, relying on local DMV data has created an unreliable patchwork. To resolve this, the federal government is moving toward a unified, integrated data solution across all federal sources. Representative Chrissy Houlihan, who sponsored the language, argued that the money saved on advertising should be redirected toward military readiness and mobilization. The government's use of terms like mobilization to justify administrative savings has only served to deepen the public's fear of a future draft. Public anxiety is grounded in historical precedent. The U.S. government has activated a wartime draft 6 times since the country's founding. The trauma of the Vietnam War remains a primary reference point. During that conflict, the drafting of 1.8 million Americans triggered massive public opposition, eventually leading to the creation of the modern volunteer force. Despite that opposition, President Jimmy Carter reinstated the registration requirement in 1980, following a period of heightened international tension. Today, the White House denies any current plans to draft troops for a conflict in Iran, even as officials state that the president keeps all options available to protect national interests. While the government views the Selective Service as an inactive insurance policy, much of the American public continues to view it through the lens of historical trauma. This new law represents a shift in the relationship between the citizen and the state by removing the element of conscious choice from a major civic duty. Shifting this obligation to an invisible background process changes the registration itself, moving it from a physical act of compliance to passive data entry. The U.S. has optimized an expensive administrative system, but in an era of global instability, a more efficient database does not necessarily lead to a more trusting public.